Hey, what's going on?
Hey, there you are. How are you?
So you're in a raft base?
I'm at Whitewater Express in Columbus, Georgia.
Oh, I didn't realize you had made it down there already.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's not gonna the water at Rock Island's gonna turn off at 9 again today, and I was like, I hate that I'm not paddling, and then I was like, I think I'll go paddling. So I just got in the car and drove.
So I guess that's really so I guess Georgia's really now the winter spot, at least as far as you guys see it.
Uh, it's close for me, and I haven't visited them because of COVID. Um, but I'll go visit them sometime. But my parents live in Macon. I grew up in Macon, so this is it's pretty nice actually too. I was thinking about that today. I was like, I had a crappy session on the wave. For some reason, I just couldn't do that many tricks. I couldn't get set. I mean, I got some air screws and stuff, but I wasn't like, I don't know. For some reason, I just kept landing and flushing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like, I can't, I mean, except for West Virginia, I can't think of anywhere where you just go to a really nice wave like that.
It's so hard.
Yeah, there's just not waves that run frequently in many places in this whole country. And the hole that I played, I only walked back up once, but I'm not really that sharp right now. I haven't been play boating much at all this summer because Rock Island didn't run that much at a good level.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to be working lunars and tricky woos and loops and spaces and blunt nasties on your first ride.
I
It
I
was
kill
like,
for that.
oh my God,
Yeah.
this is so good. And then of course I walked it. I just walked it once actually. Yeah. But I was just like, I don't really want to come back here. But then at the end of the day, right when we were getting ready to leave the wave, somebody was going squirt boating. And so I actually ran up and got my squirt boat and jumped in. And that
Sweet.
was the same thing. It's like I haven't done it in so long that I had kind of a crappy session. The first wearing a dry suit in a squirt boat is super weird.
Yeah, that sounds bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it works and it's really good for when it's super cold, but it wasn't nearly cold enough for that. I was just literally, the sun was going down and there was somebody squirt boating. So I just ran and I got in and I got a session, but it was just super weird because every time you go into water, you're like the Michelin man.
Yeah,
I was trying to like
exactly.
suck all the air out and suck all the air out and get the whole thing, and it would work. But then as soon as I went underwater, all the air from my legs would come up.
Yeah, well, and the gas expands as you go deeper down. So yeah, that wouldn't.
Yeah, maybe the pressure and the fact that just the natural thing of a dry suit with fleece over it, it's really hard to get all the air out.
It's
So
just not
I had
hazmat.
a fun session. It was super fun. But yeah, the water's all pouring in because the seal's not as good. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know how many. I probably did 20 rides. Nothing over, maybe I got a 15 once. Nothing over 6 feet deep. But it was just really fun. The light was really cool, actually. It was a really low light. Like I wouldn't have gone. Right when I saw him, the sun was on the seam. And I was like, sick. We've got like, 30 minutes at least. But then it took me almost that long to get all the way down there and get my skirt back on. And so the sun was kind of gone, but then it was cool. Underwater light was so weird. It had all these like beams of light going through it. And because the sun was going through the trees at that point and the water's going up and down, it was this weird, like, I don't know, just like some sort of trippy laser show through smoke or something.
Yeah,
So it wasn't like
imagine
as
with the.
powerful, but it was definitely these beams of white going through the water and kind of lighting up every once in a while. It's
I
cool.
imagine with that low angle hitting
Yeah,
the eddy line, it would just refract and do crazy things.
it was doing something weird because it was definitely like I didn't have my goggles, but I went ahead and opened my eyes. Then I was like, this is just weird because like I can see. And then it was like occasionally you'd actually, like if you got off the seam, you could actually, it was calm enough that you could kind of see what it was. Like, oh, it's the sun. And it's flashing because of the waves going by. So it's like all of a sudden you could see it occasionally, but when you were actually in the seam, all you saw is that it was just like light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. It was
Yeah,
cool.
that makes sense, but it's trippy to think about.
Yeah, that was the best part.
Yeah,
So I didn't get super deep and I didn't do super long rides. It felt really good just to, to get a drop and to just kind of like go into Zen mode and just kind of float along. But instead of hitting the second seam and going again, I pretty much I don't know. I just didn't do that. I never really got to the second seam in a good place where I just dropped it again. But it was still really cool.
Man, I was wanting to get down last winter or last spring, and then right when I was getting close to, COVID started for us, and I work in the hospital here. So,
oh, do you?
Yeah, I'm environmental health and safety. So for me, getting away is a non-starter. And now we're locked up again. But otherwise, I was, I'm building a new van, and
cool.
I was hoping to come down with it for its break-in trip, but at this point it'll be next year, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I don't know. No, you can go wherever you want. Luke not Hopkins. Luke
Pomeroy.
Yeah, from Canada. He was down here for most of the winter last year. And I'm not sure how that's going to go this year. I think that Canadians can come here, but we can't go there, but I can't remember.
I think it's still under essential travel. You have to have a good reason. I know it's a whole debate that they've been having because of the Canadian snowbirds,
Yeah.
So I don't know where they landed on it though.
I don't either. That's what I was thinking.
My buddy's my buddy's making a carbon boat for me, and the materials have been stuck on this side for 8 months. And we finally just paid a broker to get it across and up to Petawawa, because it was just like,
I've got a murky water boat order, and we're going to have to do a broker this time. Usually he drives it across and ships it.
Yeah. I have no idea. So if Luke has a good enough reason and his paperwork in order, he might be able to make it, but he'll probably have to go back home and quarantine.
Caleb has dual citizenship, but so I don't know.
Is that how he got away with it? I was wondering how he was down here.
I don't know. I know that he has dual citizenship, but I also know he's working for World Class.
So he has a job, so that's essential travel.
Okay.
But if Luke was just like, yeah, bro, I'm going kayaking, like, I don't think that would pan out.
So we have to get him a job then.
You'd have to get him like a marketing gig or something. So.
Yeah, he was fun.
He's a really good kid.
And we look like the hole at Rock Island has actually gotten better. I was kind of like, I don't know, just less interested, because there's some medium levels that it's really good, but it's been going right from like 1,500, which is not very good. Like, you can throw any trick you want to flush.
Right.
But you're not going to stick anything but a right blunt.
I remember being very frustrated until someone was like, yeah, that's what's up at 1,500.
Yeah, 1,500 when it's super low, it's just hard to stick anything. And then it rained, and so it started running 3,600 all the time, which is pretty powerful. Like, you want to be ready to go.
It can smoke you at that level for sure.
Alternating between the two. And so I was kind of just getting bad attitude. And then we went out there the other day, and it was probably like 3,000. It was like a great level, and it felt awesome. And then I was all excited. I did it again the next day, and then it was off. It was like, what? It turned off at like 9 or 10.
Is Brave Wave back?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
Yeah, Brave Wave is back, and it's different. I don't know what it's gonna look like at different flows. It's definitely a different thing again this year, and I don't know why. I don't think that we had that higher water, but it's definitely right now the shape of it is a big hole, a really straight hole with a good shoulder. So like Dane was doing loops in the Antix.
Gotcha.
I was in a play boat. I never stuck a loop. For some reason, I was having a lot of trouble getting it down in control and getting the pop. I kept like either falling on my face or just going straight out the back. But it was a big, powerful hole with a good shoulder. And I don't know what the level was. I think 3,000. So maybe it'll be back to what it used to look like. But used to be at 3,000. You didn't play it, and you certainly didn't try a loop in it. So something's different.
Does it still feed right into that nasty pocket, which is why it's Brave Wave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still there. It got a big piece of it broke off, but the bottom ledge is still there. So it's got it doesn't look quite as intimidating right now, but the nasty ledge is still there.
Yeah, I just remember when Adam Chappell and I were there, we were like, this can't be for real. This doesn't look bad at all. Next thing I knew, I was in that cave.
Oh, so you went in?
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, the low eddy where you turn around, it's like you always tell people, you know, when you go in if you go in the overhang, paddle the whole time because it's actually not a good eddy.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. But I've seen several people do the classic, like just flip as they go under the wall. And then sometimes they swim out and other times they're able to get out. But the rock is just so grabby that a lot of times people end up swimming and it rips their dry tops and stuff.
Yeah, my boat was fully wedged and I like climbed it like a ladder up into the eddy. That was a good one.
Nice.
But let me talk to you about Jackson for a little bit.
Sure.
So first of all, so when I was thinking about all of this, so the reason I started, reaching out and trying to interview and talk to people and record it and bring it out was, I got some heat because these things are starting to impact people's livelihoods. And the last thing I want to do is, not give people a chance to put their side forward and give the team a platform, especially in a year when we don't have paddle sports retailer or, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that's, the reason I've been doing this. But when I was thinking about this, it always cracks me up because like people always think that like you and Steven are brothers and things like that. And like, you've been a staple in the community forever, but most people don't know really your history or where you come from. So when did you become a pro kayaker and what are the different boat brands that you've paddled for?
Oh man. It depends on your definition of pro. I was a kid that got into kayaking because my aunt and uncle were big into canoeing. My mom got a divorce and we moved to Nashville and got into the canoe club. And so I got a kayak when I was 7 years old and learned to roll it and did the Hiawassee and stuff like that, maybe once or twice a year. We did some sections of the Obed when we were at Rock Island. We would drive over and do some of the easier sections of Clear Creek. And so I was kayaking a lot when I was really young. Finally got on the Ocoee at like 13 or something like that. So that might have been before. I had a little kid's fiberglass kayak, which not many people had. I didn't know that at the time. A lot of people in our club, they were bringing them in, I guess, from Germany, little Klepper miners. So fiberglass kids kayaks, 11 feet long, V-hull, flat water design, but they were sized for kids. And so my cousins had one, me and my sister shared one, and then some other people in the club had them too. So there was like the TSRA was taking kids kayaking. And then by the time I was in, I got a Mirage because it was the smaller of the plastic boats available.
Mm-hmm.
And then, all of a sudden you're a cute little kid doing enders on the Ocoee and people notice. And so I got, my parents were all in canoes and stuff, but somebody, Helen, I can't remember her last name right now, but got me a deal on my next, I broke the Mirage on something or rather, and I got it warranted. And then I got another one. And then she got me a deal on a Dancer when that came out. And that was super cool. I thought I was badass getting a discount on a Dancer. It was probably because my father was a Blue Hole canoe dealer. I don't know. You know how that goes.
You don't know sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny looking back and you realize, oh, yeah, cute kid with connections. That was it. But, you feel pretty special or whatever. Yeah. And then when Dagger started making kayaks, my stepfather had been doing maybe some legal advice for them, or maybe he just went along because he knew them all from Blue Hole canoes. And so Dick Connor got me to try one of the first Dagger kayaks out of the mold as soon as everybody else was done with it, I'm sure. But so I ended up paddling Dagger kayaks for several years and being pretty stoked. And I kind of thought I was sponsored because we had a connection at the factory who would always get me boats. And then I had, I think it was team trials for the 93 Ocoee Whirls. And I was paddling really well, but the Dagger team people were not super friendly, and they were definitely not giving me any tips. And I didn't get one of the special boats that they were all paddling for the competition and stuff. And then afterwards, they were all talking about boat design and stuff, and I actually came up to Rock Island to play in lots of different boats and stuff. And I don't know. It was kind of a weird thing where they were just really not interested in talking to me. I felt like I had a meeting with Chris Belius where I drove all the way to his house, and it was super weird. He just stayed on the phone for an entire day talking to other people, and eventually I left. So the stunt bat was out. So Denver McClure, I'm driving through Fayetteville at some point, or maybe it was at the Upper Yock. Anyway, at some point he actually, I was dying to paddle the stunt bat, and I told him that. And he said, "I'm going out of town. Here's the boat." And it's like raining. And he waved me over to the side of the road, and he comes running over with the boat and just threw it on my car and said, "I'm going out of town, paddle this." And yeah, it was sick. So then I actually I talked to Graham at 93 Whirls. I was announcing and just, doing whatever, just kind of volunteering to help out with the event. And I talked to Graham a little bit about how much I liked the boat. And he was just like, "We want to get you in the boats." But I kind of really tried hard to make it work with Dagger, but they were not interested in making a play boat at that time. And I was big into squirt boating. So a stunt bat was a lot more like a squirt boat.
Yeah.
And, the boat went over. So I think Piranha was my first official sponsorship, but I still kind of think I was sponsored by Dagger, but for some reason the team people didn't know that, or maybe they were just into their own little crew or whatever. So I don't know. It was a great learning experience though, because now that I'm, I do a lot of team stuff, and I talk to a lot of kayakers who want to be sponsored and stuff. And I recognize how hard it is to include everybody. And I also recognize how important it is that you don't ignore them.
Yeah. And it's a hard balance. I mean, you're on a team that's never physically been in the same place before. You've met, not even know each other's faces,
I hung out with Woody a good bit in the Perception days, and I was always sort of dismayed by how he just couldn't remember anybody's name. And I thought of it as kind of sad, but almost like, oh, he's not even trying. And then after working at Perception for those years, I was just like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so at what point did you switch over to Perception?
Oh, Piranha was a sick gig, and I really had a good time, and I learned a ton there, but it was in England, and they didn't have a lot of plans to do a lot of work in the United States at that point. And I was really fired up to be living in Rock Island, and I'd been working on the Gully, and I was so excited about traveling around and finding new rivers. I was just really on fire with my kayaking at that point. The boats are getting shorter, and BJ is suddenly this full-on world-class paddler, along with my cousin Howard and Tracy Clapp. And we just had such a good crew, and there was so much going on in my paddling world. And then it was like, oh, come to England and work for a month. I was like, that sounds great. But then you go to England, and it's just not. It's not what I'm used to at all. It's cold, and it's indoor work, and they don't go paddling every day. They don't even necessarily go paddling every weekend. They were awesome hosts, and they would find me people to go paddling with, and we did go to events, and we did do lots of fun stuff. But all of a sudden, I was a weekender.
It's tough.
Well, I mean, it's
tough.
not a big deal if you've got a job and you've got a lot of stuff going on. But for a job that only lasts a month, to suddenly be a weekender in a cold place and thinking, I really want to work on these kayaks, but there's all these rivers at home. Why are we here where there aren't any rivers? We have to drive like a really, really long way to do a river that's not very good. This is really hard. And so that was kind of a challenge with prawn. I think the last year I was over there, maybe I did 2 months. It was so fun. I mean, it was great for me as a person and as business and super cool people. I think it really opened my eyes to what it is to be an American a little bit, because it was, suddenly you're the one making all the stupid mistakes and not knowing where everything is, and asking, why did you put butter on my sandwich? And they're like, what do you mean? We always put butter on the sandwich. Just so many cultural differences. So I would say that the whole experience was probably way more valuable than staying in the US. But I just wanted to kayak all the time. And so I think Shane got hired by World Class, maybe not World Class. It was Adventure Quest at the time. So they had this big RV tour, and all of a sudden Shane walked out on it. And so they hired me to do the RV tour. And I was stoked, because it was like, oh my God, I can actually stay in the US all winter and get paid more and go work on boats on the Green and the Chattooga instead of, I don't remember the name of the nearby river that we went to, but it wasn't as good as the Green and the Chattooga. And so that was just a dream come true. Working with Woody was a dream come true. At that time, Woody and Risa were like, I paddled with them every chance I could all through college, because they lived nearby, and they were so much better than I was, and so much more, worldly and well-rounded, and had squirt boats and had all this crazy equipment and had been all over the world. And yeah, so those guys were like my kayaking heroes, and all of a sudden I got to work with them, which was amazing.
So you were there until Perception went through Confluence and no longer did Whitewater, or did you depart?
Confluence had just bought them. It was a weird time for me, because I'm all like, Perception is the, my first pro deal on a kayak and my first plastic kayak, and they had this great brand image, and I was really not stoked with where they were going at the time. They did this big push for kids and kayaks and stuff, and for some reason, I was more like a young punk and didn't think that was cool at the time. But anything Woody touched was cool, so I was pretty sure that this was going to be great, and I really liked paddling with Shane forever. Perception always had such good people on their team. I would just say that, Piranha, we were a little bit more the up and coming, the punks, the, run the gnar and then go drinking or whatever. And Perception just had really solid people who were always there. They worked the judges stand, they worked the event, they carried the speakers, and that really appealed to me too. There was a certain point on Rodeo Tour when, I think it was with Shane and Whitney actually, when the organizers were talking about not having the rodeo or leaving early or something like that. We can't do all these classes because we've got to go. And we were like, you can go. We got it. And we did. It was kind of cool to suddenly realize that as the athletes, it's like, yeah, we can kind of do the whole rodeo. We do this every weekend. We're good. Being at a company that had been supporting that stuff was really fun for me. Having a little bit bigger budgets and that sort of the Risa brain over the whole thing of, we're about the whole sport, not just our brand.
Yeah.
That was really fun. It was hard. That's
really something that you guys brought into Jackson later too. I mean, you guys were all over the ICF and all, every facet of it.
Yeah, EJ is an amazing person in so many ways, but one of the things that not a lot of people know about him is he wants to win the biggest competition with the most people there and know that everything was done right for everybody. I love that about him, is that he can win, and there's lots of people who can win and they're good athletes, but he really wants to make sure that no one's going to complain about the results afterwards. He wants everything to be fair, everything to be perfect, and then to win, because he was the best paddler and the score system was right and the judges were good and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that I remember. I paddled with him on his way up to the second Grand Prix, where he was there for like the big trick comp, and basically just because he couldn't handle the way, he didn't agree with the way that it was being judged, and that was basically what his issue was, right? It was that he wanted to win, but he wanted to win in that way.
Right. That's a really hard thing for if you do a lot of comps and you're really into making sure everything's fair, whether it goes your way or whether it goes somewhere else's way. In your brain, once the comp has been delegitimized, it's just so crushing. It's like a vote that you think wasn't done fairly or something. It's kind of like, well, now the winning doesn't matter. Now everyone, this whole thing is just a shit show at this point.
Right.
And that's really hard. So that was a really good thing with him. But I had the same thing with Shane, and those guys were really good about that. We had a really good, as rodeo exploded to a level of not very fun, I would say.
Overly technical.
I like the technical side. I was really into that, making the rules and trying to figure out the definitions and all that stuff. I got all wonked out on that stuff. But I really didn't like, it's like we're at this awesome spot and then all these people come. Yeah. And now it's not awesome anymore.
No.
Now it's like, normally you'd say, oh, let's go to another spot. But no, there's a big event here. So we had really good luck with the Piranha crew of, we would go to the hole and train on, Tuesday or whatever. And then we'd go creek boating. And then you come back for the rodeo.
Right.
That was working really well for us, because you didn't ever have to wait in a big lineup. You got to go to the hole, learn the hole a little bit, get some tricks going, get some basics, hope the water level was vaguely the same, but then just sort of not worry about it and show up for the rodeo, and everybody would be super, the stress levels would be through the roof, and all these people would be super worried about whether they were going to do this or that and the other. And we would kind of just coast through it. And usually we do pretty good. But a big part of that, I think, was not sitting in those lines. And so that was hard to go to perception, where it was a lot of people were a lot more serious about it. And we ended up sitting there in those lines. And it was like, man, this is really hard, because it's like the job of the year. But everybody here wishes they were somewhere else. Because you're EJ and his crew would be at 6 a.m. and my crew would be as the sun's setting. But you were always paddling at really weird hours and trying to dodge the line. Yeah. And that was a really hard phase for rodeo, because it was just so crowded. And all these people were like, rodeo sucks. And it's like, no, rodeo is awesome.
Rodeo's awesome.
Rodeo is not a great sport for crowds.
Yep.
It'd be like you go to the green and you wait in line for 30 minutes to run gorilla. That's just not what you want to do. And I've never seen it happen on a creek. You have to wait to get in your boat at the top of gorilla, and you're pissed. This was literally just sitting there on the bank, not getting to go kayaking.
Yeah, well, come to Beaverfest sometime.
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
I have.
That's as close to it as it gets.
Oh man, I caught some little eddy on that last rapid. I was all psyched. I caught some little micro eddy that we scouted, and then we went back up to run it. I got in this micro eddy, and then I realized why nobody catches it, because you couldn't see upstream, and every time you tried to peel out, there was somebody coming. Yep. That's exactly. I think eventually I got out of my boat and I walked somewhere else and got back in my boat where I could see.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you're talking about. Everyone's like, "Oh, I want to paddle with you at Beaverfest or whatever, Moose Fest or whatever," and it's like, I'm going to be putting on at a random time. I'm going to be hiding. I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to go back to running this event, because I run the event because I'd rather do that than be on the water with 400 people.
I thought it was really cool. I sort of embrace that sort of thing. Usually I'm pretty good about when it's more crowded than ever. That's fun too. There's nothing more fun on Golly Fest weekend. Pillow Rock is usually it's world class. I mean, it's literally like playing a video game where you're trying to run your line and get into the room and get out of the room and do your little freewheel off Volkswagen. And there's all these blockers. There's all these blockers coming out of nowhere. They're coming down the right side. They're coming down the left side. Some of them are jumping off the rock. There's just all this stuff going on. So instead of doing the normal line, which is pretty challenging, you're literally going like trying to manage 4 different kayaks that are right around you and weave your way through as you do your line. And I always think that is just the coolest thing when you're coming around the corner and you're like, on the left, on the left, on the left. And people are just like, whoa. But I think that aspect of kayaking is so rare that you may as well just smile and enjoy it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. When you sell it well.
I mean, what can you do? But I do kind of think it's kind of cool. Like there's crowded where it's lame, and then there's crowded where it's like, this is just ridiculous, and this is kind of cool.
Yeah. The after party is usually where I warm up to it. For sure. So, with the Antix 2, I was, again, thinking about that and thinking about like the road kind of like to talking about that. And, I started paddling Jackson boats. My first Jackson boat was one of the ones that came out of the mechanic shop down the street from your house. Like one of the very first ones.
Yeah.
And I think about, there were kind of like phase here, phase here, phase here. This latest phase of design and philosophy out of you guys just took a quantum leap. I mean, the other ones were like, okay, there are a lot of hard lines and edges here. You might be able to cut cheese on this. And then everything kind of like smoothed out. And then it kind of went to like cigar tubes. And then we wound up putting edges on it. And then we took this huge jump right when the Nirvana came out. And the design quality has been so much better, so much more aggressive, so much more forward. What changed with you guys in terms of how you're bringing these boats out that has just evolved over time to be so sharp?
As for the phases, at least, I think everybody was coming at it from a different place, but EJ's coming out of wave sport. Wave sport had gotten pretty fashion oriented and really technical. Like they borrowed the thigh braces from Perception. They had all these deck lines going on. He'd started with the easy, other boats besides that, but really clean lines, really sort of organic, flowy, waxy shapes. And then through branding and marketing and stuff like that, he'd kind of gotten forced to do a lot more graphic-y stuff and more gimmicks, and the ends on the transformer, or just all the boats got a little bit more like that. And so I think he was kind of coming out of that a little bit. But when we did the fun, he kind of put a lot more of that in it with the harder edges and the crazy lines down the middle and stuff. And it was really sort of a stylized boat. And then after that, I think it went the complete opposite. I think he was just over it at that point. He was like, I don't want to worry about this stuff anymore. And the All-Star, absolute bar of soap. The deck doesn't matter. The deck is what keeps the water out and what gives us a loop shape. And that's all. No lines, put the grab loops on wherever you want, but this is what it is. It was really a sort of a simple idea that we need, and who cares what it looks like as long as it paddles good. And then I think we had like the Villain, I remember, was one of the ones where we all wanted to have a little bit more of a flowy, sort of a swoopy shape to it instead of the bar of soap idea. And Dave did really well on that one, and maybe that was when Tony Lee joined up. I can't remember where Tony. I wish I could remember. That would be a good thing. I'll look that up. Tony Lee comes from Dagger. He can design a boat from top to bottom. He does surfboards. He does everything. He's very understated in the design world. People don't know how much work he did at Dagger and how much work he's done at Jackson. But it was really cool to have Tony make this bar of soap look cool. And
sort of like the wingtips on the ends of the villain and kind of stylizing with the grab loops and stuff like that.
And those, I thought he did that, but I think Dave actually did that. I think when you task David with, hey, could you put some cool deck lines on this and make it look a little bit more like, more like what other people are doing, a little bit less like a big sausage. And all of a sudden he could just do that sort of stuff. I think on CAD that stuff might be hard.
It's more work.
Yeah. And whereas Tony can almost take the edge of a sander and just like draw something on the deck. Mm-hmm. He can just kind of like freehand things and make sure they're symmetrical and it's done. And so he did a little bit more of that after we realized he's doing some work anyway on the plug. You may as well let him shape it up a little bit. And I don't know on the cosmetic side who got the Nirvana going. I know the Nirvana was that was a pretty toughly won boat. That was one of the first times we had a prototype that was not good. And I was having knee surgery, I think. So I didn't get to paddle it, but it was really strange having a boat and you're waiting to hear the results and stuff. And people were just like, and it was like, oh God, this is going to be a hit. This is like, we're like super ready for a new creek boat right now.
Yeah.
And then, so it was really cool. All of a sudden the last version, they got to paddle it and everybody came back so freaking fired up again. And it was like, oh my God, thank God. So that was really cool for the Nirvana to be such a big hit for us. And to be a boat that everyone still really likes now, like the Villain. Like when we were done with the Villain, no one was done with the Villain.
Right.
That's my benchmark for a really good boat is when I'm so excited to paddle the new one. And everyone else is like, why are you doing a new one?
Right.
You don't need a new creek boat. It's like, sweet, good. Because I get like, it's almost like a good song. How long is it good?
Right.
How long do you want to hear? I don't know. I can't think of a pop hit right now. Some Taylor Swift song that's like catchy as hell and so good, or Party in the USA or something. And then after a while, you're kind of like, it's still good, but I'm ready for something new.
Right.
Boat design goes like that. And the quicker you get your hands on it and the more days you get to paddle, the faster you fall. Like, it's not like you're out of love with it. You're just like thinking about things you could do better.
Yeah. I think for some people, and then for some people, it just is what it is. I think you either have that in you, that desire to push and push and push and analyze, or you're just like, it's a boat. This is great. Let's do this.
Yeah. And I really think if I didn't have so much opportunity to boat so much, that I don't know if that would be my personality at all.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of paddling for me is about the river. And I'm so excited to try to do the moves. And to, like right today was a good example. I'm here in Columbus and I'm back in a playboat and I'm playboating on a wave. And the last session I did was really good. And today's session was not as good. But I'm not thinking, oh, it's the boat. If I just had a better boat, I would be better. Because I haven't done, 100 days in the playboat this year. I haven't done 50 days in the playboat this year. I haven't done nearly as much because the Antix was new and I got really into it. And I just wasn't driving around going to competitions this year. Right. So playboating is really fun for me right now. But it's about doing the things that I think I can do or that I used to could do and enjoying the whole. I'm not to the point in my playboating right now where I'm thinking, oh, I wish the edge was a little harder. I'm not thinking that at all. I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. Sun's out. I'm playboating. I got a big loop. I really need to work on my phonics monkey. I can barely reach the water on that side. I'm so not flexible right now. I'm just thinking about me and my paddling. I'm not thinking about the boat. It's those, when you're playboating every day at the same spot, then you're starting to think about the boat.
Well, that's really been the beauty since 2010. Everything's been so good. If you're not in a good boat, it's your fault.
Yeah.
We've come so far. Like,
not that many not good boats. And in playboating in particular, it seems like there's not on a wave, there's going to be a big difference between certain models and other models. Yeah. But in a whole, a lot of people have boats that rip.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to name names, but I can definitely think of plenty. Well, Snowy wouldn't be mad if I made fun of the agent. The agent couldn't surf a wave, but it did fine in a hole. So
yeah, I know the nickname you're thinking of, and I did not. That's an interesting thing about being friends with all the designers. I mean, Snowy, I was, part-time living with Snowy's brother when I was working at Piranha back in the day. And all of a sudden he's coming over to Dagger, to the USA, as a kayak designer. I was like, whoa, dude, this is that guy who was in college who didn't even kayak that much with us. But Snowy's an awesome person. And yeah, so when some people didn't like that boat, I didn't paddle that boat. And that's a weird thing. It's like you want to paddle people's hits, but I go out of my way to paddle people's hits as much as I can. I used to try to paddle everybody's boat, and I really like doing that, but I'm not very good. It sucks when you paddle somebody's boat and you really don't like it. And then they ask, what do you think? And you're like, I got a big loop, or whatever it is that you think. And that's a tough one.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's tough being a retailer and selling something you don't believe in too. Thankfully that just doesn't happen really.
I'm such a terrible salesman. Yeah. It's hard, but you also have to recognize that hopefully people are going to be happy with what they get because they already decided what they wanted. But that's not always the case. I mean, that's a tough one.
So with the Antix too, I think the thing that surprised me the most was I really thought it was going to be so much closer to the Nirvana. What made you guys choose to go with a slightly wider platform over, a narrower, more aggressive platform?
And how do you mean like a Nirvana?
I thought it was, in my mind, when it was like, okay, it's been 3 years, it's time for a new Antix. I was thinking, we're gonna max out on stern slice, bow rocker, and make this thing as narrow until it's tippy. And you guys went the opposite way. You made it, and it was going to be 9 feet in my head. You guys stayed short, wide, and you didn't go nearly as hard on the bow rocker as I thought you would. It's a great boat, but it never, when I put it down on the ground and looked at it, when Rob finally got one, I was just like, I was wrong. That's not what they did at all.
Interesting. I wasn't thinking those directions. The last Antix I thought was a lot more playboating than I wanted when we were working on it. I was really hoping for like almost a full creek boat with a squirt stern on it. Almost we talked about putting a creek boat on a fun. And then the idea was going to be to concave the stern of a Zen. That's
what I thought you would do.
Yeah, that's what we were really thinking on that first one. Or a lot of us were thinking, and then some other people got all excited about making a new stubby, and they wanted to make sure that it cartwheeled really well and stuff. And so that's where we ended up with the last Antix was like a mating of those, and the cartwheel was actually a priority in that. And I can cartwheel it; it works pretty good.
Yeah, if you paddle a medium, sure.
Oh, I paddled the small. The small was the one I could cartwheel really good.
Yeah,
sure. I started paddling the small because everybody always wanted to use my medium. And so I would have to choose between the large and small, and the small was super fun. I can, like, even on eddy lines and stuff, you can just smash the bow down and do cartwheels. I mean, just 2 points, but it was fun. And then, yeah, this next one came in, and sort of the same thing. We were all excited about having a much bigger bow, more like a Zen, and the much smaller stern.
Mm-hmm.
And but the planning hole, I think everybody wanted more surf. We spent so much time in that last Antix on waves,
Yeah.
just because we liked the boat so much that we ended up paddling it on a lot of big water. And invariably on big water, there's waves, and you find these waves that aren't where you thought they were going to be, and suddenly you're surfing, and you're thinking, "Man, I can air screw this boat. I can do a helix in this boat. I can do all this stuff, but I want to do it even better."
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us really wanted the hull to be a little bit more on point, like a playboat, like an old school playboat,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you can really rip it into a spin and just break it into a side surf and that sort of stuff. Because we all do a lot of playboating
Oh yeah.
at Jackson. All the guys on the team are pretty much playboaters who also do everything else. But yeah, we heard that a lot from some of the Piranha kids, and a lot of people were saying, they kept basically talking about make a ripper, uh,
Yeah. Right.
and we were kind
Which
of like,
you guys were
someone,
clearly never going to
someone
do.
made a ripper.
Right.
Someone already made a ripper, and you guys are talking about how much you like it. The last thing I want to do is make something like that. And obviously, I'm not the person who decides that sort of thing, but I think that was kind of like what everybody was thinking. Well, they made a ripper, and a lot of people really like the ripper. But do you want to paddle a ripper? A lot of our team did go paddle the ripper, and all the boats that were out to kind of decide, and a lot of them were kind of like, well, in some ways, but it's just such a different boat. It's more of a long boat that you're going to want to paddle fast and down river and do the occasional stern squirt and splat. And our Antix was at the other end of that spectrum of being, not fast, but super playful. It's almost like our Antix was a jibber, and theirs was like a big longboard that you could also do some tricks with.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were very different boats. And we wanted smoother, surfier, and creakier, but we didn't want to go towards that. We really wanted it to spin.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, these are things that's why it's worth having these conversations. These little things that come out that you otherwise wouldn't glean.
Like Dane's going to the Zambezi with it. I mean, and he did
Yeah.
like a bunch of weeks on the Zambezi in the last one, and I think Bryn was in the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back from that trip, I think he was like, "Yeah, the Ripper is a very good boat, but this Antix was so good." And so I think he was thinking more along those lines. And all of us like to play boat so much. I think we could have maybe gotten away with even more volume in the bow. There was some fear about getting so big that you couldn't play the bow at all. And so kind of looking back, I understand why they were doing that, because now every time I'm looping the new Antix as opposed to the old Antix, it loops better, but it's harder to get the bow down. And I'm glad we didn't go too far and just lose the loop altogether.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of my favorite tricks to be able to do in the boat. And the whole way down the galley, you're just like, you're just playboating all the time.
The best part about looping a half slice is no one sees it coming. That's the best part.
And you can find new places.
How did you guys decide where you were going to wind up on the spectrum from, like super winged out, squirt boat stern to, puffed up and not really slicey, like the Axiom 9, which really didn't slice. It was more of a river runner. Like, how did you find, what was the criteria? How did you?
That was a tough one. I think everybody wanted creek. We want to be able to run it on harder stuff. And Steven and I do a lot of squirt boating. Dane has done a good bit of squirt boating. A lot of us noticed that the ripper was staying up a lot longer than we were on the stern squirts. We would get it down and get the spin, but the second one was a little bit harder. I paddled with Shane on the Golly one day, and I believe he was in the mullet. I'm not 100% sure. It could have been the Brap, but I think it party Brap or mullet. But he was just, Shane is such a beautiful paddler. And he got like a double 360 splat in my little splat room below pillow. And I was so stoked, and I put on my Instagram and was super fired up, and I worked and worked and worked, and it was just so hard. And I was just like, I know how to do this. We know how to do this. We should do it. But then, David and EJ and all the guys who do a lot of boats and stuff, they're like, well, these are really different goals. If you guys are wanting it to wing a lot more and actually work more like a squirt boat, where it's actually going to carve and you're going to be able to adjust the angle of the carve as it goes around, you're talking about something that's wide and flat.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also saying that you want to be able to, bomb into the notch and not worry about back endering. Right. And those aren't really the same thing. So it was kind of I'm not sure who came up with the idea and put it on the boat, but I was definitely noticing sometimes the squirt starts a little further forwards than you think. And if you can get the stern to start going underwater really early, then it's a much smoother transition to getting it up.
Right. Because then you're waiting for the seam. You're not like behind, you're ahead, and then you get caught.
Yeah, it's like if you get it started, the bow rocker goes up a little bit, the stern rocker goes down a little bit, and now instead of having to drop the stern edge into the oncoming water, which is a pretty tough thing, if it's wide and flat and super low volume, you'll be able to control that. But otherwise, you're likely to catch and flip. But now if you can get it started and go ahead, and I'm looking at the screen now, get it started like that and have the stern just naturally rocks down on its own. So now when you get to 45 degrees, that whole stern has got water going over the top. And now you've got a lot of stability because it's got water on both sides of it. And you go that next little bit, and now you're smoothly back up. So I think that Dave came up with that trick, or someone came up with that trick of going ahead and, keeping the edge nice and high where it's not going to get out of the way, but starting it a little sooner to get that water flowing across the stern, so that when you're wanting that offside edge to start to catch, the whole boat just drops down to make sure that it does. But when you don't want it to catch, if you don't actually lean the wrong way and start into that turn, it's up high enough and you've got enough speed that it just stays behind you.
Yeah, which
I'm really blown away. It was I won't say that everybody was 100% confident with the CADs. And we had all these changes that we thought we were going to be doing to it. Like what you said about the fuller volume, the big fat creek boat in the front. Some people were saying, concave the stern and make it even smaller. There was all this talk about what we were going to do to this boat. And David presents, looks good. It's like, let's try it. And literally it was really interesting how quiet everyone got the further down the river we got, is what I would say. It was almost like, you always, I don't know who you work with, but anytime we're talking boat in any company that I've ever been with, you've got your preconceived ideas. You're upset about this, you're stoked about this. You've got all these preconceived ideas going into it. I've gotten to where I just try to just erase all of that. I just try to completely forget what we asked for in the boat, all the discussions that went on about it, and just think, it's a kayak. Let's just see what it does. And that really helps me get out of those situations when I can remember to do that. But anyway, so it was really interesting to get the boat. I mean, Dane just, like, in the first day in flat water, he just goes out and kicks it to vertical and spins around like in a stern stall or something. And I was like, oh shit, that's different. And then it's like, but it's Dane, he can just do that.
Yeah.
So we wanted to compare weights. We got Emily in the boat, and Emily just rips it into a stern squirt. And it was like, well, that's weird. And some of us weren't doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us a little while to kind of figure out that sort of slalomy style instead of the play boater all weight throw.
Yeah.
That idea that you drop the edge and just let it ride and it'll do all the work for you.
Yeah.
Like carving a snowboard or something like that. When you set the edge right, it's over before the turn starts. You've got it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really fun to figure out. And we had a day on the Caney Fork, actually, super low water Caney Fork, trying to get some footage and be able to show it for what it is. And it was just like, yeah, I mean, we're within sight of the takeout. Caney Fork's like an 8-mile run with lots of little rapids. It was super low water day. And we're playing this tiny little eddy line, like right within sight of the car. And then we did like a 600 CFS golly run. An idea that we could paddle a river, that nobody would see the boat.
Right.
And so if we had to make major changes, we could. And we were playing last chance at 600 CFS and just having a great time. Like,
that's a good sign.
And then it was kind of like, oh, so whatever it was that people were thinking we wanted, what we know is that this thing rocks the way it is. It's like, it's good. It may not be what he asked for on this and what I asked for on this and what she asked for on this. Everyone didn't get what they wanted, but it when you've got it's a winner. What it is a winner. It is. Big differences. There's lots of boats that aren't my style, but I've got to say, like, it's just a fucking timeless boat. RPM was not my favorite boat, but I videoed it out of it for months, and I was like, this is just such a good boat. I'd been paddling a 270 for a while, so I wanted to do other tricks a little bit more, but I was just like, this is just so easy at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you just know it. It's like, this is like timeless. When people are like, I don't know which of your boats to buy, and I don't fit in this, or I can't get this, and it's like, compare the RPM. It's just a winner. And that's kind of where I felt we were on the Antix too.
I think that's exactly where you hit it. I mean, I resonate with everything you're saying.
Is there something that it's not doing that you want it to do? And that's where we all kind of like almost, we got to the point, the more we paddled it, the more we thought, I think this is the boat. So that was really cool. It was almost like Dave just hit such a winner with that first thing that we got to paddle, that it was over. Whether it was what everyone asked for, or, there were sides going for smaller, there were cartwheeler, there were sides going more creaky, there were lots of stuff going on, but that was the boat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem for you guys is going to be warranties, because this is going to be the boat that everyone does everything in, and you're going to break them. I mean, Hannah and I, the first time we had a chance to get in the Rob's, demos, I paddled the medium, she paddled the small. We got to the bottom and we ran things I wasn't thinking, lines I didn't think I was going to run today in this. And this is the boat I've been looking for since I topped out of the Axiom. We just kept coming back to it's just as timeless. It's just a tuned up. And then you put them side by side and you're like, I know they didn't do this on purpose, but this is where this came out. It's so close.
To what?
To a Dagger Axiom.
Oh, interesting. Because that's
super close.
The Axiom was such a late hit. I actually got to see the whole Dagger crew and Axiom prototypes and all that stuff. And I asked Snowy about what he thought. And he said, it's a really good boat. I don't know that it's your boat. And I didn't paddle it. I just, I think he knows my style and what I was going to want and stuff. And I was thinking way slicier on the stern.
Oh, yeah.
And he was basically like, no, we didn't really do that. That's not where it ended up. It's a little bit more of a river runner that you can stern squirt. And so I really, it was interesting when that came back around. I mean, how many years did that kind of linger before it took off? I
9
don't know.
years.
Yeah, it was almost like the introduction was flat, and then it kind of like did this and it did this, and then all of a sudden people just fell in love with it.
Yep.
So I have paddled one before, but I was not paddling it with the idea that this was a big hit that everybody loved yet.
Yeah, and neither was I. I skipped over it for forever, and then one got left with me.
Yeah,
I couldn't get out of it. But I will say, at the end of it, when I'd finally cracked it like 3 or 4 times, and it was just at the end, I squished the stern in it.
You always wait too late.
And that's why I was just like, oh yeah, apples to like, you know, as close to apples, unintentional as, you know, thing as possible. But the biggest difference for me is that the stern on the Antix 2 is a little bit longer, it's a little bit wider. So if you land like a spout boof or something like that, or any sort of, you know, stern pour, you're going to get that pop and that like wheelie away, which can be awesome or it can be scary. But once you know it's there, the Antix 2 is like it has a slow burn, like you're saying. Like you kind of like build into that boat. And I think like
I didn't feel like it inspired confidence. The first time we took it on a hard creek, we took it on Richland Creek, low water, late in the day, having to wait, like literally wait. We did another run, and then we waited for everyone to leave. And so it's a super late day, walking up there by yourself thinking this is a bad day to have a pin, because it's going to be dark any minute. And I was just like, I'm not even going to the top rapids. Screw that. I'm scared enough to just be running this thing down it. For some reason, the visual to me did not look confidence inspiring. And it did look like a boat that might pin and that might get the stern sucked down a lot. And yeah, it was so weird. Did the first run in the old Antix, and the second run didn't run the top rapid. And I was like, I'm walking weirdo. You know, weirdo's it's not a hard rapid, it's fine. But it was dark. And I was like, yeah, I'm just let's do this. Let's get some time on the water. We'll test the boat on harder stuff. And I just won't run that rapid. And then instantly it was like, you know, I just kept going. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to eddy. And the same on the green. I ran the large down the green one day, and then it was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to have to do that again. So that was sort of a weird thing. I don't know that it's actually a much bigger boat than the old one, but something about the better planing hull and that, man, Dave just knocked the rocker profile out of the park, I think.
I was going to say, you're sitting in the rocker profile way better.
It just doesn't, it's like when you're wave surfing the bow never pearls, which was super fun on the dries. I was like, it's fun to surf a longboat on the dries. You just have to know you're going to face plant.
Yeah.
And then we didn't face plant. I was like, oh, this is sick. You go all the way to the top of the wave, and where usually the longboats, you get to the steeper part of the wave and they just go poof. And they didn't do that. So that was cool. But then it was also really nice to get to, I don't know, it just seemed like when you hit a hole where the old Antix would kind of hit and plane, but the stern would go down and then the water would break over the stern. Like you got a nice skip sometimes, but it was a fine line between a skip and a little bit too much sink. Mm-hmm. And this one doesn't sink so far. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't sink.
It just takes all that planing hull and just carries you right over.
So we would have been fine on the first booth on Richland, I think. It's just kind of a stout hole. It's not even hard, but it's really awkward if you do get served, and then it's kind of a messy cleanup. The boat goes into this undercut eddy, and I don't know, it's just messy. So I was really thinking that's not the first rapid for this boat at all. And now I'm kind of thinking that's actually a pretty good rapid for this boat.
I don't think I've cheated anything. I've crashed, but not more than I should have. But I will say I did get pinned in it. I went under a tree 2 weeks ago in the large, thankfully the large, and it was insanely stable for being wedged under a tree. So
that's the challenge with this boat, and I feel, you know, it's always nice to just enjoy what people say about it and let people say like, oh, I'm going to run everything in this boat. And it's like, well, you need to remember, the wider and flatter the deck, the harder the pin.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not like it's gonna pin easier necessarily, but once it does, it's bad.
Oh
We learned
yeah.
that in the pirouettes and stuff. The pirouettes would just lock in so much harder than the boats than like a crossfire. And in squirt boats you find that out. A big flat surface with at the right angle with the water hitting it, it's just so much more power than a round one. That's going to be the challenge. I haven't pinned it yet. I've definitely done some damage to the boats. I've got very cavalier and freestyling it and just bashed it all over the place. I think the green one that I started paddling the medium, I've repaired 2 or 3 holes on it now, which is great.
Perfect.
It's been demoed all golly season. It was demoed and people kept coming back with something wrong. I think anyway, there's a lot of boofs that we landed on rocks and that sort of stuff. And that's just been really fun. So it's kind of, the warranty thing is kind of a weird thing on it, because it's almost like I like it so much I don't want to add more plastic. It's like, well, I could add more plastic, or I could just make sure and be a little more careful and just really enjoy this 34-pound boat that you like to run the green in. If I was a green local and I was going to be running it 100 days or something like that, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go.
Well, I mean, this will be something we're talking about for the next 3-4 years, I think, as much as design, because they are getting lighter. There's no question. Between
so nice when you've got a shape
layup
that
and
molds well.
Yeah.
That molds well enough to make it really, really light and still have enough plastic under the hull. But then, we could decide, do we want to make this the kind of boat that's going to hold up to stern squirting at Charlotte for, 30 days a year or something, and just grinding it on that cement at the expense of every time it's on your shoulder, every time you have to put it on the car, every time you take a forward stroke, and every time you try to do an air screw on the dries. And I don't know. We just, those early prototypes, it's almost like normally when they make the pre-productions or the protos, the boats are just such crappy builds that they're like really heavy and they just don't act the same and stuff. So we got these things in and it was just like, oh my God, this is good. But it was like, is it good because it's 32 pounds?
Right.
And that was a really hard thing to think of. It was kind of like, well, everything's better at 32 pounds. Yeah. So we added only 2 pounds and it looks like it's stiff enough to be super solid. But I think it was way more fun getting a mold that would mold at 32 pounds and still be a really functional kayak with no thin spots, and being able to add weight to make it a little bit, more impact resistant and that sort of thing, rather than usually you're like, it's 40 pounds. How much can we get out of it? And that's not as fun of a game to be playing when you know that there's these thin spots that you're flirting with.
Yeah, when you're worried about breaking off cockpit rims.
Oh yeah, yeah, on horse pasture and have. Yeah, so it's fun. I think there will be people who need a heavier, burlier, just more plastic in the boat for scraping down low water runs all summer or something like that. But I really like the idea that the market's got this boat for the people who are going to be a little more careful on rocks. You get all that benefit of just being able to move it so much easier and, obviously carrying it and stuff. It's really fun to have the large. I can run the large on just about anything. And it's so light.
Yeah. And it's the large is like, for me, I'm somewhere between the medium and the large, and I can take the medium out and it's super playful, although still not as playful as between watching Dane and watching Steven's, dealer call and being like, we really focused on play on this. I was like, oh, this is going to be a squirt boat. This is going to be spicy as hell in class 4. And no, Dane's just a beast. And
yeah,
it's not actually that playful. Like Dane's it'll do the work, but it won't if you don't want to. Yeah.
that is really interesting watching Dane do that clean squirt that he figured out that day on Caney Fork and was working on it, and he was working on it on the Golly. And then I got that video of him of hitting it in the eddy below Sunshine just perfectly. And, you know, I've gotten them, but it's not, you know, in my repertoire, at least, it's definitely not something I'm going to do at the end of a really good, sick line on something to finish off the video. It's more of like a, let's shoot this 5 times and maybe I'll get to 45 degrees. It's so freaking hard to hold that edge down at the right angle. And, you know, it's a lot of abs to be pulling up on that. You're just hanging your body weight on one knee while trying to balance with the other knee almost. And he just rips those things all over the place now.
Well, I mean, you just have to be really in shape because it's a lot of abs and not a lot of extra weight on your body, you know, to pull up.
Yeah, he's really good. I've never seen anybody that can balance on edge like he can. He did all that time in C1, and I think that was really, really helpful to him because he paddles on both sides occasionally. And he's been doing, you know, the lunar orbits and clean McNasties and stuff like that in a C1 without the use of the paddle. And so then he can just do it without.
I hear that he paddles C1, but I never see it, but I believe it because I saw him paddle C1 in Uganda. He just got in this. There was some sort of lawsuit involved, but a knockoff carbon Project 56 that somebody in Britain made, and he just ripped this C1 for like 2 laps and jumped out like to make sure no one saw him and like kept going. He's ridiculous. But where along
medaled in C1 again, didn't he? He might have medaled in C1 again.
I have no idea.
Yeah, in world's competition, you know, that one year he won. What was it? He won
K1, C1, O1.
He won juniors and got 3rd in canoe.
Yeah.
And that was when he was like a little kid.
Yeah, 16.
He's done green race in C1. He's done,
it's been a while though, right?
Yeah, I think he's lately he's been pretty focused on just getting first he was focused on breaking the record. And then when he did that, everybody said, oh, under four. And now he's getting kind of sucked into that. Like, I thought it was kind of sad this year. It's cool that they did the race anyway. Some people went, some people didn't. That was all cool. It looked like it was fairly loosely attended. So I hope nobody gets a contact trace. But I thought it was a little sad that the story that some people were putting out there was Dane doesn't break 4 minutes. Somebody actually put that as the heading of like Dane wins, but not under 4. And it's like, he got the course record. You know, how about, isn't the story that he got the course record? He had the course record with a 404 and now he drops it to 402. I mean, the consistency on that is ridiculous. And this is in a year when, I don't know, what did Adrian get, like a 445?
He had like 12 seconds on the next 2 guys.
He did something wrong, but there weren't a whole lot of other super standout runs. Calhoun with a 416.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a big gap. And props to Calhoun, definitely not. I'm really stoked to see him finally put down a solid run. But it just seemed like he was so far out ahead. I thought a 402 is pretty damn cool.
Not a lot of mistakes on the course at 402.
Not a lot of mistakes on the course. And you know, you can see on the video if you're really paying attention, there's a couple wide turns. So it's definitely there. It's definitely there, but you know, maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't.
Where to go back to the Antix real quick. Yeah. Where along the line did that wheelie bar come back from way back, or how did that even happen? Like, I look at that and I see like a Mr. Clean.
Oh, you know, that was actually kind of a cool thing. That was another little, I don't know what you would call that. So we're getting pushed really hard to go longer. A lot of people on our team that we talked to and a lot of dealers and a lot of other people were saying speed. But instead of saying speed, a lot of people actually said longer, make it
9 feet. Has to be 9 feet.
9 feet. And we're all kind of like, no, I don't know about you, but some things I hate about 9-foot boats. I can't close the car door. I can't close the truck top.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walk with it on my head, it hits the ground all the freaking time. So freaking annoying. If you do head carrying like I do,
I don't, but I can see it.
do, you know, your head's on the back band. You can tighten the back band as far as you want. But when you're walking on flat ground, it's okay. But as soon as you take one step, the bow hits. Things hit everywhere. Anything longer just feels heavier when you have to carry it because it's so much less nimble on your shoulder. And then when you go to play boat, you just dropped the number of places you can play on the Ocoee by a lot.
That's
Ocoee, not my home river, but you know, it's somewhere that's close that I've been going to all my life. And it's really nice to, when we had that other Antix and all of a sudden we're able to, I can't think of I can't describe the rapids to you, but there's 2 or 3 rapids where it's like the coolest thing to come in there and rip into the stern squirt. This is right by, not Sweet Cheeks. Anyway, this squirt boat spot. You can rip into the stern squirt and then it's like a flat bottom and you can get it to vertical and bounce around on it.
That's awesome.
This is one eddy on one river. Who cares? But it's sort of like a benchmarky thing for me because you just can't stern squirt there in a lot of boats. Like I had a big squirt boat and I could do it there, and so I liked it. And then when I got little squirt boats, it was over. You know, they all hit the bottom. So someone came up with the idea of asking, where does this float compared to the last one? And then he showed us. And it was like, oh, we're like lower than the last one. He's like, well, the stern's 2 inches longer, or whatever it was, an inch point something. Dave is very technical. But yeah, and it was a little bit lower. And so then he was like, well, we can fix that. It will not get in the way of the stern squirt at all. But it'll just make it, once you go vertical, it'll be at the same level as the last one. And that's what we did. I'm not sure that it makes a huge difference on, but the other thing is I had an experience in the last one when I was in the medium, when I'd paddle the medium. I got to a drop that had a tree in it, drain pipe on North Chick. And so I went into the last chance eddy because I just assumed we were going to run on through, and I can see a tree sticking out of it. So then I'm in this little bitty eddy and, you know, spinning around or whatever. And Nick goes and is looking for another line. I go to get out of my boat. So I went ahead and popped my skirt. And every time I tried to get out of the boat, you know, in this super swirly eddy, the stern would go under just a little bit. And I got water in the boat. And then I was like, I actually had to be like, I need help. It's over. You know, I just lost this game. Someone needs to help me. And so somebody had to go hold the boat and pull me out of the water because I was just like, at this point, I'm in jeopardy of sinking and going off this thing. So I mentioned that I didn't. The original version we had was just dead flat all the way up to the cockpit, and I was like, well, it's going to do the same thing. All you're going to have to do is get that little bit of a jump, and the water's just going to roll straight up that stern and pour into the boat. So I think that's what he was thinking. David really kind of added that idea. We tested it with foam on the existing boat, and you know, we did a lot of paddling around and doing squirts on a stupid little eddy line here in Columbus, and you couldn't tell. Like, I mean, if you didn't know what boat you were in, you just couldn't tell. And so he assured us that it had some benefits, and yeah, I don't. It seems to, whatever benefits. It's hard to say because we didn't paddle the other boat nearly as much, but I think it has done what we wanted it to, which was put it right back at that other Antix level when you're stern squirting, open up the door to getting vertical more places, and also having a little bit more leeway on where you can paddle it.
Yeah.
That day in North Chick, there were like 4 logs that we had to get out. And it was like every time you're like, you know, you're facing forwards, trying to see if you can get around it or whatever. You're hanging on to the eddy, but it's not really an eddy. And there's current behind you coming towards the bow. And it's that classic situation where it's like there's not much current in a regular boat. I can just pop my knees in and jump out, and I can't in this one.
Right, but this thing will load and just go. Yeah.
Right. And I actually think the rocker profile on this one is just a little bit better anyway. Or maybe for some reason I can sit all the way in the back. Like I can sit way in the back seat in this boat, and the stern still doesn't sink. So I don't know what though. Like the last one I think had more of a stern kick.
Yes.
So when you got too far back, the whole thing rocked up to here. And this one doesn't seem to do that. So I'm not sure if it would have been an issue in this boat anyway.
Well, with this one, when it does do that, it kind of like squirts away. The other one would like, because of the kick, would just stand and like stall at like 30 degrees. This one, like pumpkin seed, like loops out of itself.
Yeah, just a lot like the Zen, or a lot like some other boats. Anyway, the more planning holes we got on North Chick, the more times I started running the meat of every hole. Like first you're like, let's see if this works. So run the meat of the hole. And then after a while, you're like, I think it's easier to go ahead and hit the drop where it's more vertical and where the hole is stiffer and get that skip. And that was really fun to be on North Chick the last couple of times in this boat and just be like, this is actually kind of fun. Like I'm almost to the point where a couple of them, I think I might could do a trick off it or something. Because the skip is like, it's so easy to get the bow up. And then the skip is definitely going over the boil. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I won't do it, but I want to find somewhere where I can try some little flippy things on smaller drops instead of saving it for the just really big slides or like the stairs at the new.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of times where I went into something and told myself I was going to do it, and then it didn't happen at the bottom.
Yeah, when you're looking at the water that doesn't clear the boil and you're thinking, I don't really want to look into that on this trick. That makes it harder for sure.
Yeah, kiss it on its way by. Yeah, I mean, from my experience, this boat busts through anything, just as long as it's not able to vertically pour on that stern, you're going to be fine.
So far, I mean, I really haven't had a bad. I haven't had it not work yet, which is weird. Dane was saying he feels really confident even grill at 200 in the medium. And I don't know, I don't have that much experience in that rapid, but I certainly wasn't feeling confident. But I think he just got more and more confident with it. And it's been a lot of places. I ran the large down the lower meadow instead of the medium, and I did not regret that decision whatsoever with all that super junky rock. But then I don't know. I guess I'm going to build into it slow. Because I'm really worried about trees and undercuts and stuff like that. Everywhere I've taken it, it's been a lot easier to paddle than I expected. But I haven't gone super aggressive with it yet.
So yeah, all I can tell you in terms of pinning it is when I wound up with a tree in my lap. You're definitely, every time you give the stern somewhere to go, or you give the bow volume somewhere to go, it's going to go there. So that's the only thing. So like if you lean back in that situation, it's going to tilt. Or, but other than that, it's like a creek boat. You'd be better off if you were pinned in a creek boat.
Right.
But
the creek boats have a little bit more room to get your knees and stuff out. They're so big in the bow. They tend to stop sooner on the way under things. And you don't have that flat shape on the back to just go down super easy. But I haven't really felt like I was going to pin yet. I haven't tried to go over any logs or anything like that on anything hard. But like, running the medium down the Russell Fork was like super casual. I totally like botched tower, the little rock 360 at the top of tower. I ate it so hard. I like downstream flipped when I fell off the rock wrong, and then I like whiffed a roll, so I got my second roll and I'm in the dead center of tower, and I was able to just turn it around and just go right through there. And I think that was more, I think that wider planing hull allows you to get over things that you don't expect to. That was a really nice feeling to think, I really do not want to surf this right now.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like right on the double drop, just kind of just smoked right through there as if it was a good line. Like I would do it again. It was like, oh, I would run that again. It just went straight across that. I didn't go under at all. I didn't sub out, and I didn't turn left right into the sticky part. So that was really surprising because I had no speed and I was literally like going off it backwards and just turned around. But I think that might be part of that, that slightly wider, super big planing hull is if you can get 1 or 2 strokes in to get any speed at all, you've got a good chance of having that just deflect you right across things. And that kind of opens doors.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not moving at all, it'll fight you for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's why that was my first real question about the boat was like, to me, that width and the shorter length, that's the whole story to this boat, you know.
It was super fun. I was at some NOC event and it was raining like crazy. And I don't remember if it was COVID or just the storms or wet. Anyway, for some reason, no one came. Like literally nobody came to this event. It was flooding. And I got to sit there and talk to all these boat designer people, and reps and everybody else about boats for a little while because there was nobody else in the building except staff and us. And it was great hearing Chris talk about what he wanted to do with that Ripper, and maybe the Ripper was just out, but he was like all so into the narrow and the fast and the narrow and the fast and the narrow and the fast. And I was just like, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Because he's like, oh, so you guys are going to do something like that too. And I was like, no. Yeah, nope. Not where we're going with that, which I think is the right thing for you don't make deals with people in the industry. Everyone in the industry is just worried about trying to sell the most kayaks for us, trying to sell more than somebody else. But if you take a step back from that and you realize that I'm a kayaker and you can't make everything that I want to make. I mean, nobody gets to make all the boats they want to make. It's like, oh man, I can't wait to do another creek boat. And they're like, you just made a creek boat. It's like, no, we're ready for it. We're going to do a different one. And they're like, yeah, maybe in 2 years. So that's really hard. You don't get to make all the options that you think that a lot of people would like. And so hearing that, I was kind of like, cool, because we have all these, I know a lot of people like that. They're all about the speed. What they really want is a slalom boat with enough rocker on the bow that they can take it down Little White. And it's like, awesome. Our team is a little bit more like that last one is kind of hard to helix. That's a really different thing. But it's nice that everybody gets one. So when you come out with something like almost like the Phantom in the Nirvana with such a sort of a crushing blow, we've got this awesome boat. It looks super cool. We're really excited about it. And I bring it to the green, the first pre-production or whatever, right before green race. And I'm parked next to this car at the hotel I was staying at. And I'm like, how could anyone else have a prototype? Did Dane give somebody his boat? How can somebody else have another one of these? Because I'm pretty sure that this is like one of 3. And nobody else here has it, except for maybe Dane somewhere. And so I actually did. I got out and looked. And I was like, oh my God, it says Dagger. And it was just like so bummed. And then there was all these people like you copied them, they copied you, all this.
I hate that.
Like, that didn't really happen. We didn't even know about this boat. The one that we saw looked completely different. But it was kind of a bummer. And I don't know if they paddled the same. I haven't paddled it yet, but I was just what a bummer that we've got these boats that might be sort of the same thing with 2 different logos on it.
They're so different.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you can make a deck look like something and the hull's totally different, and it is a totally different boat. But that was a little bit of a disappointment at that point where I was like, oh, what if there's not that many companies in this game, and what if 2 of them basically make the same thing? That would kind of be sad. Instead, what I want to see is, I want to see these crazy super rocker waka shapes come out and be like, I would never have done that. but people seem to like it. We should paddle that. Let's check it out. And then somebody else does like an Axiom, for instance. All these people like, I like the Axiom, and it's like, oh my God, I would never have guessed. But let's check it out. That's awesome. Somebody's vision that they did, that a lot of people start liking, and then you find out why they like it, especially when it's not your vision at all.
Oh yeah.
Like I want a puppy. I really like puppies, but they're just too high energy. I want a lot lower energy and maybe like fluffier, but it needs to be edgy. It needs to have like, I don't know, maybe claws or something. And someone's like, a kitten? And you're like, yeah, kittens are cool. But if you're like so excited about your puppy, you'll never see a kitten.
Right.
You don't even want a kitten.
Or if you already think you don't like cats, you're never going to be stoked on that kitten.
Right. So like an Axiom is a great example. It doesn't look like something that I want to paddle. But then when everyone says they love it, it's like, now I want to paddle it. Mm-hmm. I'll get to try something new. I'll have a different experience. And that's the cool thing with all these companies getting to make boats. You see a boat that doesn't look like what you wanted to do, but then it looks like a good boat anyway. And then you watch it go down the river and you're like, I need to try that, because I don't even know what they were going for, but it looks like it does it. And that's a really cool experience with this. You know, we're not making tennis rackets. You know, they don't all look the same, and they act radically different.
Right. I mean, we're talking about a sport that's barely 45, 50 years old, really, when it comes to gear that's actually made for the sport. So, you know, we're early. I mean, like tennis rackets, you know, we'd still be talking about willow and bamboo and like deer sinew for the webbing, you know?
Yeah, it's there's so many things that we can do. I mean, creek boats in particular, it's weird because you can get down any run that's ever been done in a free fall.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of can, but they're radically different experiences. And this creek boating world went to micro 230, 7.5 feet for a little while, had a few drawbacks, but nowhere near as many drawbacks as people thought. I mean, I'm sure the Germans were laughing because they were in topos for years. But for us, it was like groundbreaking to run Gorilla in a 7.5 foot kayak and be like, this is just nuts. But then it
fit in eddies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like we were just running things. That was a really fun phase because I could run things that I couldn't run before. Like literally walking up that side creek of Bear, that Daniels Creek, and just being like, I can run all this now. I can now turn my boat around in that eddy. And that was super fun. Then things went longer, and you know, who knows where it'll go next. But
well, that's my next question is, you guys are sitting on the best lineup without question that you've ever had. I mean, you've never been in this position in terms of having such a good lineup. You're getting to that point where it's like, is it worth changing what you already have? You know, like, are you guys looking at new concepts? Are you
always?
I mean, like, because I mean, usually it's been like EJ's model that he was pretty public about was like 3 years, we're going to reinvent the wheel. 3 years, we're going to reinvent the wheel. And it's like Nirvana's turn is coming in hot. And it's like, is it really worth it?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sure everybody's scheduling has gotten thrown for a huge loop. Because sales were starting to decline a little bit in a lot of areas, and it was really hard. You know, a creek boat is a very different thing to sell than a fun, for instance. Mm-hmm. You know, you sell a fun, and the whole family's super happy. They paddle the crap out of it, and they're stoked. And 3 years later, if they manage to wear it out, they get another one. And a creek boat, you have a hot creek boat, and they come back in 6 months. And you're constantly trying to say like, oh, well, you know, it looks like both ends of this boat are tacoed. And it's really hard to say what happened on that crack. But, you know, it's just a lot more work for the warranty people and a lot more work for the, you know, your cost of making the creek boat has to factor in the fact that you have to warranty all these boats. Like I saw this awesome thread on some group like Kayakers Over 50 or something. And it was all these people saying, why don't the companies make lighter weight boats? And it was I was just like, pulling my hair out. I was like, oh my God, you have no idea how hard we fight to keep the weight down. It is so hard. It's more money, it's more time, it's more blooms. It's so much more expensive to drop. You drop 4 pounds out of a kayak and you just jacked the number of warranties possibly, but mostly the number of scrap boats you're going to make.
Well,
It's like,
and 1 second, let me show you something. So most people would never know, but this cutting board I made, this is 2.5, 3 pounds of kayak plastic. I mean, that's it. That's all the weight that we talk about when we talk about shedding physical plastic out of a boat, but it's in a curve, so you can't understand what it is.
Yeah.
That much. And like you said, like it makes all the difference in the world. And especially
I'm not in molding all the time. Those guys could definitely tell you exactly what it does, but the weight comes out of it in places that you don't want it to. It's like you're all stoked that we've got all these awesome thicknesses, and you drop a couple pounds and suddenly there's a hole behind the cockpit rim. And you're like, how did that happen? Why did all the plastic that we just dropped come out of there? There's a lot of, shielding in the air, and there's all this stuff that you're doing to try to get the plastic to form, or like, for some reason, good design plus, I'll give props to the mold makers. I don't know how well they did. I just know that it worked the first time, which was sick. Or you just get this Antix that right off the bat, you're like, I don't like to say this, and I don't ever want to be quoted as saying this, but I think that we can safely say that we could add more plastic. That's super weird. This boat was like really, really unusual in that respect. Usually you're trying to drop weight and spending all this time, but that's the tough game with the creek boat market is when you get a shape that works, you figure out where it breaks and where it needs more work, and you get the mold running right. It's nice to let it ride for a little while and try to build back up from those that, those first ones. I've still got one of the first Nirvanas, and I freaking love it, but it was too thin. And I had to say, this, too far, and freaking love the boat. It's so nice and stuff, but it's not going to hold up. It's already lost a lot of its shape. It's got the fold behind the cockpit rim. It's got all that stuff going. But now that it's dialed in, it's really nice to have a boat that just runs and you know what it's going to do, and whatever problems it has, you've worked on them already. So creek boats are a little bit harder, it seems like, in terms of getting them absolutely right, because they've got to hold up to so much more abuse. And you can throw plastic at it, but we don't want to do that.
Well, even a playboat, right? Like you make that playboat hull a little too thin. It oil cans on somebody's roof so bad it's worthless.
Don't put them flat on the roof.
Ever.
I know I tell people that all the time, but everybody does it. And then I look over there and my Antix is flat on the roof. But so we all do it. But you know better, but sometimes you do it.
But we do it. Yeah. It only takes once. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that my playboats, I mean, I have destroyed some playboats. But like the playboat I'm using right now, I dropped it walking back up to some wave, and it started down the Caney Fork on its own, and I got super lucky. It pinned somewhere on a tree, and I was able to walk it back out the next day. And it's got a crack in the cockpit rim. It was folded badly. It's great. It's like, it's super good. It's like, well, this isn't the kind of boat that I'm going to be taking somewhere hard. I'm not worried about it folding on me. And it came right back into shape, and it's just bomber. So I love the fact that when you get a boat dialed in, the playboats and a lot of the boats, these shapes that we're making that are so round are ridiculously durable, and they seem to last a really long time. But I don't know what they're guessing a green, any boat that runs the green 30 times, I think, is toast in a lot of ways. So that's a tough one. I don't know. I've heard the numbers. When I was living over there, I think, was it Obi, who does warranty for Liquid Logic? He had like the number of runs down the green most boats would last. And, a lot of it depends on how you run rapid transit. But
right. Well, I know that was like the the really thing about big thing going from like their Hefe to their Stomper was the warranty number just plummeted. And that was part of it.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, because like you pick up a Hefe, it's still one of the lightest creek boats ever made.
Really?
Shockingly light. I promise.
There were a lot of
And
those
then you
things
pick up
too.
a Stomper and you're just like
Oh, is it heavy?
super heavy.
Yeah, and that could be. I don't know why that is. It could be to hold up to more runs down the green, but it could be. It could easily be somebody at the mold making factory didn't do a great job, and there's a thin spot or a thick spot, and all of a sudden you've got to cater to that, and it sucks because you've got this. I've seen some boats that started as this beautiful, beautiful prototype and came back from the mold maker with 2 inches less bow rocker, and you're just like, we just got screwed.
Yeah, how that happened?
That stuff happens. The mold, it's not a perfect science every time. And sometimes the boat will get better and sometimes the boat will get worse, but sometimes they'll be the same. It's not always they're the same, and occasionally they're a little different. Almost every time they're a little different. And, even though it looks the same, that piece of aluminum might have a problem, or the designers didn't quite factor in that this curve was just a little too tight and the plastic's not flowing.
Or the shrinkage or whatever it is.
Yeah, so there's certain boats out there that I'm always just like, why did they make it so heavy? Why do they make it so heavy? And then you're like, there's like so many reasons that could be their fault or not their fault.
Right. Yeah.
It might just have to be that heavy. Or it could just be that they're kind of lazy and they got behind and they just thought they don't want to scrap any boats, and so they threw more plastic. Or they thought, we run a lot of low water stuff and the boats wear out, so let's make it so it lasts longer.
Yeah.
Everybody has to choose.
Yeah, I mean, if you take 2 pounds off a play boat but add 2 pounds to a creeker, is anyone going to complain?
Hard to say. Depends on how you carry it.
The last question I had for you in sort of like a boat talk was it's been really interesting watching in the last 3-4 years the way that you guys, I guess 5 years, have really stepped up the outfitting game. I mean, it went from like, this is basically the same for 10 years. And then all of a sudden just, reinforcing, going to a better pillar system, better seats, better pads, everything. Do you think that's something that's going to continue into the future? Or do you think you're going to go towards the stiffer hull model that like some people are going towards? Or are you going to stay kind of more in the flexible, absorb the hit?
It really depends on how it goes. That's a good thing to bring up. I think when what's some good out, like Confluence or Wave Sport or whoever got those front, the seats kick up at the front. Dagger came out with that injection molded outfitting system with the cool graphics and all that stuff. They just, they went to, I guess, I'm assuming they went to China because that's where all the graphic stuff usually comes from. And they made this super top end, really nifty little system. And it's not that heavy for what it is. It's pretty nice, but that thing is expensive. That is a very high dollar piece of equipment, that seat. And
they're basically giving it to you. They're not charging more for the boat. They're eating the loss.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they just get to make so many of those because it goes in all their boats or something, and they just went for it and invested long term. We looked into doing something similar and didn't want to do it. There's so many aspects to it of how many more sales are we going to get and how much better does it work and how much is the weight. So we have been playing with all sorts of different outfitting ideas, but we've been having a really hard time of making it work better enough to justify a lot more money and a lot more weight. And that's it's unfortunate when you work on something and it just isn't better. And that's a toughie. Like, you can go ahead. I mean, the easiest thing in the world, we could throw, a different style wall and a different style thigh braces and it would be new. But, like, we had some really cool ideas and they're like, oh, and it'll just take two screws, that's all. And we're like, we don't do screws.
Yeah. Right.
And they're like, no, but we will for this. It's so cool. And we're just going to have these two screws and that's it. And it's like, yeah, we don't do screws. And that's been a challenge too, with the with not wanting to put a single screw hole through the boat. The thigh braces and the wall changes and some of the other things that we really want to do, it's really hard to figure out where that stuff is going to connect when you don't even have a spot on the top of the boat to drill through.
Right. I mean, you can't connect it all from tabs off the bottom of the coaming, right? Like it has to secure somewhere.
Yeah. So that's been a challenge. Is it seems like what we've worked on so far has either been going to drill through the thigh braces or drill through the seat, or some of the good ideas that were put on the table. And so they didn't pass. EJ was really adamant about the new holes, and we're all really stoked about the concept that, you know if your skirt is leaking. Other people are like, I don't know if my skirt or if it's this. It's like, yeah, it's your skirt.
It has to be.
Yeah, and that's a really nice thing, and maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not, but that's kind of been making it harder for us to really improve. There's lots of things that we've looked into. I mean, I would say that there's some foreign made boats that have some really cool ideas, and I don't know, we've talked about it so much. It's almost like, I would say, this maybe 3 rounds of talks about revising the outfitting system, and you get to a certain place and I don't know, you just run into either cost or assembly or whether it's actually going to make this particular shape. Like one of them was like, well, it's going to do great in these boats, but not in this one. So
right.
We've got some ideas and we've got some work to do, but we haven't found that much better yet. And there are people that do. I would say there's some really good outfitting. A lot of people have had a lot more luck. But like if we had screws in the thigh braces, then we would have done 4 different things at a thermoform or something by now. But we don't want to do that, and we want it to be something that a lot of people are doing really aggressive thigh braces right now. I would say maybe just because I paddle Jackson boat, and so I'm not used to it.
They're getting aggressive.
Yeah, and I'm hypersensitive to that. EJ was too, actually. I think EJ pinned in the back channel of Great Falls, and had a hard time getting out of his boat. And I've done a couple of them. I hyperextended my knees twice. And in another log pin where I just couldn't get my knees out of the Perception thigh braces, and had to tell people, you've got to pull the whole boat out because I can't get out. And so I'm a little hypersensitive about that. I got like 10 minutes to sit there under a log and think about it.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it now, I would not have gotten out of that log in Oaxaca. No way.
I haven't seen theirs, or I have seen it, but I haven't sat in it.
Yeah, I mean, they're just as aggressive as those old ballistic ones where you could max them. Remember the Rad and the Smoothie that had the rollover ones with the sticker that said, like, if you overdo this, you're gonna die. Like they're super aggressive.
I mean, it's really nice. It's like it'd be the greatest thing in the world if you could have them super aggressive and then like some sort of, I don't know, not ratchet or whatever, but some sort of like breakaway where it breaks, but then it pops right back into place or something. I'd love to do it out of foam and just make it super bomber, so there's no way I can fall out of the boat and I don't have to push on my toes at all. But then I definitely, I had that adage for a long time, is I want to be able to pull my knees together and stand up and dive over the undercut. Because I got to do that in California, going into that sieve, and I would always say that was really helpful. I got my feet, I got 1 foot in the seat of the boat before I pulled the skirt. Like I was literally thinking, I need to be able to jump up and out, and somewhere or other I just got both knees in and got one foot like all the way under my butt, and then like just pulled and dove, and it worked great. And so sometimes I'll get in some of these other boats and I'm like, I'll get used to it, but I'm not used to it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
It'd be
remember when
fun.
EJ told me that he had paddled the entire, was like 2010 or 2009 summer cross-legged without modifying the boat to see if it would help cartwheels to center his weight on the seat or something insane
Now, who
like
told you
that.
that?
And we were, yeah, yeah. And we were like, there's no way that you did that. And he goes, yeah, whatever. And he just sat down in his boat, Indian style, and was popped in.
Who was it?
EJ.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, we played that game. We surfed Garb Indian style, which is dumb, super weird. It was a cool idea, and it was fun to play with, but definitely super weird.
If you learned that way, if you started that way as a kid,
I never got far enough into it to know whether you're going to get the muscle memory and the strength and get comfortable with it. I never quite got super comfortable with it. Like I think I did Garb, but I just basically got on Garb and surfed around a little bit. I was a lot more comfortable on smaller things in it, and realizing it was cool realizing, yes, we can roll and it's not really that hard. And yeah, we can do a lot of stuff, but I never, I don't know. I never quite got to the point where I was like, oh, this is going to be so much better, but it might be. Maybe people will play with that again.
someone will see this and try it and decide that it's better or it's ironic or something.
Yeah, you could make a shorter boat. You can make a shorter boat. You have less swing weight. There's all sorts of good, neat ideas about it.
It could be the future of squirt boats because you wouldn't have to, adjust the wing.
I think the volume would be in the wrong place. Yeah, the squirt boats is all about your legs. I think maybe the future of the squirt boat is just taking the deck off. I don't know.
Could be.
Have you paddled flooded yet?
Have I paddled what?
Flooded?
Squirt boats scare me so much. No, I can barely get in one with a skirt on and not panic.
Oh, it's really fun because you can squirt in a swimming pool. So do you do roll clinics?
Yeah, I've done it in like a playboat, like a small playboat flooded, but not a fiberglass boat.
Yeah, just about any squirt boat. You can even take most of the foam out and just fill it up with water in a swimming pool. And it's the same motion. It's really hard on your abs and your core, and there's a balance to it and stuff. But the first session that I did it took me a while to finally get the hull on the bottom of the pool. But really quickly, I could get down to where I was hitting both ends on the bottom of the pool. It was a lot harder to get it, less dynamic spin so that you could actually get the hull down there. But that guy, Michael Lockney, is just doing ridiculous things in the swimming pool. He just like subs it out and then does like flat water routines underwater. Anyway, it's a really fun thing. I decided I would try it at some pool clinic, and then that's all I did the whole pool clinic. It was like they're like, oh, you help me with my roll? It's like, yeah, just in a minute.
Yeah, I'm gonna sneak real quick.
I really want to, but this is too wild. This is too weird, and I don't go to pools very often. This is super cool.
That's the way I feel about bringing a full slice to the pool now. Like I used to bring a playboat and be like working on my flat water loops and just burning my abs up, and now I'm just like, I'm going to stern stall this thing and try to bob the entire perimeter of the pool and like around the diving board, and splat my whole way around. I'll be over here.
Yeah, the cartwheel 360. Yeah, the ones that don't have a diving board, I like to see if you can kind of like splat wheel all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Well,
pool clinics are underrated.
They are. But they're where the next generation comes from, and you got to go there and reach out to them.
Yeah, they're always funner than you think. I'm never excited to go to a pool clinic, and then I always have so much fun. I try to just remind myself of that.
Bingo.
Just go. You're gonna love it.
And ours is a mile from the ski hill, so we just time it so when the lifts are closing, we go to the pool. Perfect. And then by the time the pool's closing, it's time to go to the bar and have dinner. So it just makes a full day.
Lots of things could have been wrong, but you can roll. And that's a nice thing to always have in your head. That calm sense of, I don't care if I miss 7 more, I'm going to get it. That's a really nice thing to have in your head anytime you go out in a whitewater environment. And you guys who live in the north, that's got to be hard to do. Otherwise, I can see those first big days of spring boating not being at your most confident state.
Yeah, it's the most bizarre thing to go into your biggest days of the year completely off the couch, out of shape, not feeling it, and just it's such a different game, but versus the end of the year where you're just like,
right,
I'm keyed, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I got to go to bed soonish. But my last question is always, never would have guessed that we'd be all paddling half slices a couple of years ago. Never would have guessed that freestyle would just drop off the face of the cliff a couple of years before that. Take a wild stab.
Big, but freestyle is definitely so technical. The people, the English in particular, are going so freaking hard with like real coaches and video review, and they're all at the same center, and they are pushing it so amazingly hard that it is hard. Like, for me, I'm kind of like right now, it's like, oh, I got an orbit. I almost got a trick you. I got to make a blunt nasty or whatever. And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. And it's like, no, those are like forever ago tricks. You need to be doing blunt to nasty to orbit, space out of the orbit right into something else. And it's like, oh my God, this is daunting because the tricks have gotten so hard that there's just not that many people who can get there without a lot of work. And so, the US tour is a little bit more like it used to be, but we have a lot of young people. And then, a lot of them age out and go into creek boating from there. But I still think it's really good base for everything you do after that, because there's so much rolling and there's so much awareness in the air. Like, look at someone like Tom Dole. All his waterfall stuff that he's doing right now and all his creek boating, you're like, oh my God, he's so smooth. And then you kind of remember, well, he is from France, so he had a base, but he mainly play boats. But
right.
Every time he's in the air, it's just like that dude has some sick awareness in the air. And I don't know if you would get that with just creek boating unless you just got to run a ton of waterfalls.
Probably not. What do you think the future of the sport's going to be, though? Like, what do you think we're going to be focused on in 5 years?
Like we're seeing with the half slice, the future is the past, and with the slicey boats. So the next big thing, I'm not sure. I really like the freestyle on the creeks. I've been saying that I thought that would come back for way too long. I would say that I was just full on wrong at this point when people were saying, oh, what's going to be the next big thing? And I was like, it's the freestyle on the creeks. We're going to make boats that you can do freestyle while you're running creeks. And that's where it's going to go, because there's so much potential. And then it didn't really happen that much. Everybody kind of got all into racing instead. Right. So all of a sudden we're all in 9-foot boats, which don't do that stuff nearly as well. And so it kind of backed off a little bit. But now I think the half slices, they're not made for doing that necessarily. But it opens some doors. We've got a boat now that's 8 feet long instead of 9 feet long. It's really light. It's got the wave surfing bottom, and it's it's nimble enough to throw around. That last Antix was really good too. But it's going to happen in everything. I think, I want to see a resurgence that's happening right now with the, everyone started freewheeling Gorilla. Then the back freewheels off Gorilla. Somebody accidentally kick flipped it, but I think sometime people will get to where they just kick flip it, because it's got a great curler on it. I just don't want to land on a rock from that high up. Aniol doing the backflip off that Tamatia. The Cobra flip is just happening. Like, it's almost like I wanted to ask everybody on the team pretty much. It's like I usually ask, what are you doing to progress your kayaking? What tricks are you working on, and that sort of stuff. And now it's kind of like, have you gotten the Cobra flip yet? Right. And how many times have you hit it in your head? And I don't care. Nobody cares, but I just think it's interesting. The people that say yes, they've been trying it, are not the people you expect. It's like all through these weird generations of people who just, they see a new trick and they want to do that and they go for it. And like when Dane and Nick and all those guys, everybody at Rock Island was doing the Cobra flip off the falls. We had this wild session where it was like the falls ran for 2 weeks and they were just, Dane was doing like 10 in a row. And I never could quite want to do that because it's like, do I really want to? If I get it, I don't want to land like that.
Right.
And that sucked because I was like, I really, really want to do this, but I want to find a smaller drop. So I've been trying it on 2 smaller drops and just eating it all over the place. And it's so funny though, because like even on the Golly or just wherever, you see just all these people go for it. And then you see lots of good boaters who won't. So I think that's I think there's going to be a lot more progression as soon as people have a reason, where it's not just a cool trick on video, but if we can get some maybe freestyle down the rapid competitions and that sort of stuff coming around, and I think that will, or that's an area that's been waiting for more expansion, and now there's all these tricks that a few people are doing, and I think that will just become a lot more classic. I think, I don't know what rapid it will be, but there's going to be rapids where everybody goes and does that, kind of like waves that everybody kick flips.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're in a lot of people and you just know that everybody in the line is going to hit a kickflip on this.
Right.
I think it's going to get to the point where everyone is just like, oh, this is so cool. But we're not there yet. I think the racing is still going to be really popular. I really like the racing is hard just because you have to have so many boats or always be traveling around with that long one. And that I think has slowed it down a lot. The international people who want to come over here and race, they're either slalom racers or they've never paddled a longboat. It just doesn't seem like that sport exists anywhere else. It's like having, top hockey players come over here and have to play basketball, or they have to put a lot of time in. But international racing is, wide open for what we can do. An international racing tour like the freestyle scene, it's interesting. There's fewer people doing it in the US, but the people doing it are really good. Yeah. And they work really hard at it. And then we go international and everyone thinks, oh my God, the USA is the team to beat. And they don't realize that it's not like it used to be where there's, a 30-person lineup at Hellhole all day. That's just not happening anymore. But the people doing it hardcore are doing it pretty hardcore. And racing is so much easier for people to buy into because you've got a boat, it works in lots of places, and you paddle hard. Right. Nobody's gonna realize how much better the top racers are than they are until the time comes out.
Right.
And you get to work on it, and it's not some judge telling you whether you got the trick or not. It's literally like, oh my God, I just got a 6-minute time at the green race. And I thought I did good.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you're a 6-minute racer, which means you're going to be able to shave so much time off your time next year and be a much better kayaker for the rest of your life as you work on it. It's super awesome. It's really cool. And then when they get down to the 5-minute time and they're realizing that other people are working on 4-minute times. So I think the racing has so much potential. It's a little
I think racing will grow if the culture improves. Like if it becomes too elitist, it will shrink. And that's what wound up happening here. So
how do you mean elitist?
If racing grows when you encourage people in the way that you're describing, racing shrinks when it's a cool kid club, and somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, but you can't bogart a run to train, or you can't only be a cool kid if you race, because then you force other people out of the put-in. So I think if the racing community is open and friendly and encouraging in the way that the freestyle scene used to be, it'll flourish. but if it kind of goes to the dark side, it will diminish.
Huh. Yeah, that's slalom has really serious athletes and Olympics and all that sort of stuff. And so I always thought that they were snobby, I would say. Slalom never appealed to me growing up as a kid because I was just around the wrong community that was not inviting or not. And then it's a really expensive boat that I can't hit rocks in. So it just never happened for me. But I see that happening in every sport. Like when you're at a world championships for freestyle kayaking and you spent, $1,000 plane ticket plus boat transportation, plus hotels and time off work, and there's people swimming and they're talking about, oh, the hole is way too burly. We want to change it because people are having trouble and these people keep swimming. And you're like, I'm like, freaking God, I just spent all this money and there's people here who didn't bother to learn to roll.
Yeah.
Because they live like, 100 miles away. So they just thought it'd be kind of cool. It's hard. So that happens, I think. And you'll have racers who are like so fixated on trying to get the perfect run. And all it takes is one person doing the ferry above Gorilla to get in the eddy in Portage, and they might be furious. Whereas, you don't on the river. They're furious because they're having the run of their life, and suddenly it's not going to happen.
It's done, right?
It's done. But there are those interactions. But you are right. I think it's really hard to remember that everybody is together on the river, and it's not our river, and the idea is to get better and better and better. And just because you've been working for 10 years or whatever to get to where you are doesn't mean that the people who have got 2 years in aren't just as good at people working just as hard. Right. There's no way for you to know that. And that's kind of the cool thing about the seeing the people come out and do freestyle tour every time. It's kind of like they are working so freaking hard, and I know that they're not going to make the first cut, and that's got to be just crushing. And so the least we can do is show them a good time. Let's all remember that we're in the eddy together, coaching each other and trying to just have a fun time. It's a beautiful day. It's a fun sport. And so you've always got to be, shifting gears to think a little bit big picture. And I don't know what the extreme race, usually the extreme races are it's a bonding experience because it's almost like you're the gladiators and they're sending you in one by one to face the lions. Mm-hmm. And then when you get out the other side and you're all there and you all face the dragon and you're all survived or whatever, it's just this huge bonding sensation that it doesn't really matter what time you got, because you all face the dragon together. And so that's, I think, a really cool side of racing that's not necessarily in normal paddling is, everybody's up there, green race in particular, everybody's up there at the put in, just like, if you have to start late, if you skip a year at green race, a lot of times then start way in the back of the pack. And I had a 2:30 race and it was just like, wow, these people are absolutely terrified.
150 people that went ahead of me.
Yeah. And oh, really?
Well, if it's 2:30 and you start at noon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just watching people go and just sitting there and being nervous about your run. And it's definitely like, it's contagious. And pretty soon you're like, oh my God, I almost just want this over. And then you kind of have to get your brain back in and be like, oh, it's a new day. Here we go. But it was really fun. And to get to the bottom, and people who finish 2 hours are still, they know the feeling. They know exactly what you're feeling when you get to that finish line, and they are stoked for you, and they're asking you how you did, but they don't really care, because they're just on this big adrenaline high. And then there's this, it's like everybody just ran a super hard rapid and everyone did okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. I think the extreme racing is always going to be a real bonding thing like that. Like North Fork. Everyone talks about what a great event North Fork is. And I've never been to the event, but I'm always like, well, everybody who runs Jake trying to run Gates, if you don't feel awesome at the end of that, you got a problem. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be just an amazing bonding experience to all face that dragon together. That would be, really challenging and really scary. And then everyone gets to the end and you're just ready to party.
Yeah, exactly. And that's for me at this stage, like that's what I'm really focusing on is I think going forward, I'm going to be focusing on growing the party, growing the community more than growing the race. Like the racers can grow races. They're great at that. But you know, I just want to see more people still here when they're 35.
Yeah. And if you want to organize a race, let somebody who's really into the race do that whole part.
Yeah.
It's all that matters in the race is that the absolute race, everything is done right. And if it's not, it ruins it for the racers.
Right.
So they are really, really fixated on that, and they know how to do all that stuff. Like I'll be honest, like I've had my green race ruined so many times when I heard about some little problem or the way they did this or the way they did that. And coming from a freestyle world or organizing some bigger events and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, that can't be happening. And then you get to the end of the race and nobody cares. It's awesome. And everyone's having a great time. And you're like, oh man, that just about ruined my race, because I'm thinking as an organizer, oh my God, someone's going to protest. And you guys just opened yourself up to a protest. They don't do that. People don't do that. But the more competitive you are, the more everything seems to make a big difference. Most people aren't that competitive. And so the people who are competitive, let them figure out the details, because they're the only ones who care. And
Right.
then if they figure out, it's their fault. And that's way easier.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's what I think I've learned for sure. Well, and not only that, but like for the amount of energy it's going to take, I can make, for the amount of people to smooth over a 5-person issue, I can make 500 people have the best weekend of their year.
Right. Yeah. If what your focus is in your paddling is having fun and trying to get other people to have fun, then you're probably going to be better at that than someone who spends all their time trying to shave 3 seconds off their race run.
Right.
They're not thinking about that. That was interesting with, Greenway was a great example of John and Jason and those guys trying to organize a festival and a party. It's kind of like, I don't think that's really your thing. That's you guys are like really into hardcore stuff and really into the racing and this whole party organization. And then, they get good people to help them, and they've done it for so many years that they knock it out of the park. But it was really funny when you're kind of like, that's like me with, the people I work with at Vail or whatever. They just know what stuff we're good at and what stuff we're not good at. And that's been really, really easy. You're like, can you check where we put the finish line? And it's like, yes, I can check where you put the finish line, because, I'm sure that they're thinking the last time we sent you up there to set the finish line up, you guys came back 2.5 hours later and it looked horrible. And we had to tell you, yeah, we're not doing that. We're going to redo it. And so it's really neat to have a crew up there who does all these ski races, and they just knock it out. They're like, zip, 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 zip. Here's this huge thing. It says finish. It's over where you want. And you're kind of like, yeah, looks good.
That would be really nice.
The cameras are going to swing this way, and this is going to come in here. And the athletes and they're like, but the athletes can't touch the sun. And you've got to be like, oh, well, that's a bummer, because they're going to touch the sun. But yeah, just you do what you're good at. So I think that your festival has a lot of potential. I had a great time when I was there, and there was no race.
Yeah. And that was a weird year. You showed up at the highest water year I think it's ever been.
It was super fun.
It's still crazy.
Yeah, I had a great time. People like competitions because it justifies a travel expense, and it justifies people going to something. I find, if like Golly Festival, I'm going to Golly Festival. Right. Because for so many different reasons. But a lot of people don't. They're kind of like, well, why would I want to go paddle a Golly on the most crowded day of the year? It's kind of like, yeah,
if it's a race, then you have to be there.
Right. Then everybody has to be there at the same time. And there's just that little, that human mentality of the thing where I've been training all these races. Which races are you going to go to? I go to the Wrestle Fork, and I race sometimes and don't race sometimes, but a lot of times I do, whatever. But I'm almost always there on race weekend because I'm planning to race. Every other weekend is like, you want to go to Wrestle Fork? I don't know. There's something else running or this or that, the other. But, when there's a race and it's on this date, you plan for it. You're doing the race. When it's a festival, it's a little bit more like, let's see if it rains. And I don't know why that is. Because you have to do preparation in advance. Because you have to train.
Yeah.
You go out and do some sprints, and all the rivers you do leading up to that, you're doing them a little faster, and you're thinking about, I'm doing this race, I've got to plan for it. And that kind of builds the excitement of doing it and kind of justifies the, whatever it is, 5-hour drive.
Oh, well, Clay, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad we synced up and got a chance to talk. I got to crash out, but give me a shout whenever. I'll try and touch base with you the next time Jackson puts out something new.
I can't wait till we get to do that.
If not sooner.
It's always fun. But yeah, I'm really stoked on this Antix. I can't believe it was a one prototype and done boat. Dave Knight just knocked it out of the park. And I think a lot of people, it's a weird combination of all the different goals for the boat that all came into a really smooth design. So, whether it's the boat that everybody wanted or not, it's a damn good one. And I really like that aspect to it. It's changed my paddling to more of what it does well. And now I'm, I just keep taking it on slightly harder stuff, and we'll see where it goes from there. We'll see when it gets cold. I might start moving back to the large a little bit. I
bet you do.
Why not? I don't know.
I bet you do. The large is nice when it's cold.
Yeah. Someone pointed out that I haven't been promoting the Zen much, and they asked if I didn't like it, and it was like, I haven't paddled a creek boat this summer.
The
Antix came out, and then the Antix was out.
It's becoming a problem how little time you spend in your creek boat, and then you need that creek boat, and you.
Yeah, I did one day on Mans, and it was awesome. But I was definitely kind of like, whoa, this is different.
Oh, yeah. I have to switch gears big time. But, yeah, next time you pass up to the Ottawa or whatever, let me know when you're coming through up north. Okay. Something's always running. I'll take a day off work, and we'll pop around. And same for everybody.
We had a great time up there. That was so fun.
Man, hopefully with the relicenses and stuff.
That was awesome.
Yeah, hopefully with relicenses and stuff, it'll be going 24/7 in a couple of years.
So, the Moose?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, we're starting our relicense in the next couple months.
Oh, sicko.
So we could really see a total basin-wide moose black beaver change in the way our landscape works. So
that would change a lot.
Yeah. If the minimum flows were actually accurate, correct, there would be boatable, like low, but boatable flows in all those classic runs 24/7.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Even weekend releases is huge. Like the Wrestle Fork, so many people love the Wrestle Fork at low water more than they like it at high water, that I've always thought it's almost like sad that they do the, whatever it is, 4 weekends a year at a level when a lot of people don't really like it that much. When they could just do take 2 of them and do 4 weekends with those instead. Cascades is the same thing. They do so much water down the Cascades that it's almost like, man, you could do a lot more days at lower water and entertain a whole lot more people with the same amount of CFS. But I don't know.
It's actually the manpower that costs all the money.
Oh.
Yeah. Depending on the unit, it can take 20, 40 man hours to shut it down and pop it back up. So.
Well, that would be awesome.
Yeah. But
fingers crossed.
Thanks for chatting. I'll let you know if it happens. I'll catch you later. Thank you so much, man.
Good talking to you, Alex.
Later.